Hey guys, Phil Fisher here with Birdie Brothers for Christ. Today we are going to talk about Itinerary, so stick around. Hey guys, for episode 2, we're going to be talking about the itinerary. Basically, what an itinerary is an outline, a very non-specific outline. I mean, it's not specific, but it's at the same time it has specific details in it, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit. This is a very, very important part of your hike, and while it may not affect your hike directly, it could have a very serious impact on the aftermath, or the how it plays out in the event of an emergency. So like I said, it's not specific, so specific that you literally tell exactly where you're going to be at exactly any given minute of every given day. However, you do just basically summarize what you're planning on doing on your hike. So, you tell them, you say in there like, we're planning a 4-day hike, and on the first night we are going to be staying at this lake. The second night we'll be staying at this lake or this campsite or whatever, and things like that, just to give people, or give any sort of emergency responder a good idea of where you're going to be depending on what day it is that you are into your hike. So once you have that, and we'll get into some of the more specifics about that kind of thing, about what I feel you need to have in there, and that's not end all be all. I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. So that part's just going to be my feelings on what you need to have in there. So once you have your itinerary built and it's printed and you have your copies and all of that good stuff, then you're going to take one of those copies with you and leave it on the dashboard of your vehicle at the trailhead. And you leave it on the dash so that somebody walking by, they can look through your windshield and they can see kind of where you're going to be at, and how long you plan on staying at this lake or whatever. Okay, so again, these are all my opinion, so take it for what it is. You need to have the date and the time that the hike is beginning, and the planned time that you're going to come back. And if there is no determined, say you're going to pack enough stuff for 7 days, but you might come out early or whatever, then that needs to be noted in there. And this is really for the guys that are like me, that go out for 4, 5, 6 days at a crack. If you're going to be camping, which if you're not day hiking, you're going to be camping, then you want to list where you're going to camp, the date you're going to be camping there. Um, you don't have to get so specific that you put down that we're going to arrive at this lake at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. But you do need to at least have the general information to show that this is where you're planning on camping. And after I get through this list, I'll go over my reasoning why I think itineraries are so important. So you have the date and time that the hike began, and the time you're planning on coming back to your vehicle. Obviously, if a ranger walks by your vehicle, looks through your windshield and sees your itinerary there, and sees that you were planning on coming back yesterday, but here your vehicle still sits, that's going to be his first clue that something may have gone wrong. You might be, who knows, attacked by a bear, you fell, broke a leg, who knows? There's all kinds of different things, right? You might just be running late. But that tells him that maybe he needs to go grab his pack and start hiking out and checking these places that you said you were going to be camping at. The second thing that you need on there, or the third thing rather, is at least a vague idea of your route that you're going to be taking. Now, this may not apply to a lot of trails because some of them are, out and back. Some of them are loops. But where this comes into play is the lakes that you're camping at. A lot of these lakes, they're off of these little side trails that shoot off of the main trail. And there could be quite a few different routes to get to this same lake. So if that does exist, if that exists for you in your hike, and say there's 3 different trails that come into this lake from 3 different directions, then you want to make sure that what I do is I use a highlighter on my itineraries, and I highlight what trail we're going to be on and things like that. The fourth thing that you need is emergency contact information for pretty much, this list could go on and on. However many contact information, however many people you want on your emergency contact list, that's who you should have on there. Whether it's family, friends, whatever. And I would suggest a mixture of all of those. There's always extenuating circumstances for things. Family members might be gone on their own trip, or friends might not be able to be contacted, or what have you. So the more people that they know, or that they have information to contact to let them know, hey, we just brought your friend out of the mountains. He's got a broken leg. He's at this hospital, so on and so forth. If that's not there, it's not going to stop them from finding information or finding the contacts, phone numbers, and things like that. But it will definitely expedite that whole process, and notifications will get to the necessary people a lot faster. So along with all of that, that's what I view as required information, necessary information. I'm a dispatcher at a sheriff's office, so that's where I I kind of used the knowledge from that to build what I believe is necessary information. These all of this comes from questions that I would ask if somebody called into the sheriff's office I worked at and said, my brother is hiking and he's overdue and we don't know what happened to him. So this is based off of those kinds of questions, the initial questions that we would ask, or that I would ask. And like I said, this is not an all-inclusive list. You might have other information that is absolutely necessary. Are you diabetic? Do you have other medical issues that that search and rescue is going to need to know about? Just those kinds of things. I would suggest think worst case scenario and then build your itinerary off of that. If the worst case scenario were to happen to me, what information would they need to help them find me faster? So, Ed, I'll give you a scenario, kind of just a little, not really real world, but just kind of make it a little bit more contextual, I guess. So you're going on a 4-day trip. You're now in the backcountry, by the way. This is mainly backpacking that I'm talking about, because that's what I mainly do, is just backpack and a minimum of 3 days, 3-day trips. Because obviously if you're day hiking, you're obviously going to be keeping track of the sun, and so you probably keeping track of how far you've gone, hike out until noon, hike back, and whatever. So this may not, I mean, it's still a good idea, just because you never know. Even on a day hike, you might fall down a ravine or whatever. So back to the scenario, you're on a 4-day trip, and oh, by the way, now that I'm thinking about my scenario, this is not just for people to find you when you're the part of when it's an emergency on your part. This also is a big one if, like I said, think worst case scenario. If there's a death in the family while you're on your trip, if there's a major accident that involves your family, things like that. If you're an emergency contact for somebody, then you probably want to make sure that you do this, just because they're going to try to contact you. So that's part of the first scenario. You're out on a 4-day trip, and you're about 10 miles into your trip, and you're at a lake that is 2.5 miles off the main trail, and there are multiple trails that shoot off of the side trail that go to different campsites. There's a sudden death of an immediate family member, and they need to contact you immediately. If you have an itinerary and you have it marked out similar to what I had described, then they know that, okay, you're 4 days in, and we'll say a couple days in. You're 2 days in to a 4-day hike, and because they know when your hike started and they know when you're planning on coming back, so you're 2 days in and you're staying at this specific lake, and you have on the itinerary, you have a little map, a map of the trail, and you have highlighted the route that you're going to take to get to this lake. So now they know, not only do they know exactly what lake you're at, but they know, or they potentially know exactly which campsite you're at. Um, and even if they don't, even if you just have to kind of bushwhack around the lake to get to these different campsites, that's going to significantly reduce the area of land that they have to search in order to find you to give you this notification. Now you take that same situation without an itinerary, and now all of a sudden they might know what trail you're going to be on, but that's about the extent of it. So they might know what trail you're on, and they might know when you left to go to the trailhead. So now all of a sudden they have, instead of, we'll say the lake is 1 mile around, instead of that area to search, now they have potentially 20 or 30 miles of trail and maybe even 4 or 5 different lakes to search. It's going to be significantly longer for them to find you that way. And then you turn it around, and now you're the one that has an emergency. And say you're same situation, you're at that same lake, you're on a 4-day hike, and you are hiking around the lake, and you twist and break your ankle. You fall off a rock and dislocate a knee. You do whatever. There's endless amounts of scenarios that way. And again, this assumes that you're by yourself. Now, if you're solo hiking, then this is an absolute must as far as I'm concerned, an itinerary. You have a partner with you, then you have some you have some backup that way. But it's still necessary. There was where we hiked last year. If something would have happened to either one of us, it would not have been pleasant, because yes, there was 2 of us, but where we hiked to was it was pretty remote. There was a trail that went back to that lake, but it wasn't kept. It's not a kept trail, you know what I mean? It's not taken care of. So it's pretty overgrown, and it's almost impossible to follow. And if something would have happened to one of us, it just wouldn't have been very good, because you would have had to have left somebody out there, and that's not a good situation either. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. So you're the one with the emergency now, and your itinerary says you were supposed to be back on a Tuesday, and it is now Wednesday evening, and you haven't returned yet, and your family calls the ranger station at the particular trail that you are going to be on for whatever or the local sheriff's office if it's not overseen by your Fish and Game or whatever. And then so they go out to the trailhead and they find your vehicle. Yep, it's still there. You have an itinerary in there. It says this is where you're going, this is where you're staying. And so now they know that they can skip over certain lakes and not have to search those lakes, and hopefully, more than likely, whatever happened close to or in transit from one of the lakes that you said you were going to be staying at. And so that just it just gives them it's a lot quicker for them to find you. They don't have to have a super large manpower presence to be able to search, not initially anyway. And mind you, this is not like, even this is not going to help things if you're not sticking as closely to it as you can. You know, it doesn't mean that you can't have like side hikes and whatever, but if you start doing side hikes that are more than, I don't know, I would say more than a few miles, then you're starting to get outside of the helpfulness of an itinerary. In the event something happens, you're, you know, say 5-6 miles from the lake that you said you're going to stay at, then that pretty much null and voids the itinerary altogether, because then they're going to have to search a bigger area. And it's not perfect. It's not perfect just because of that. But this definitely is a huge help when it comes to emergency responders to know where to start looking and how to find you and that kind of thing. And I truly believe that having a good itinerary and making it just specific enough that you can follow it and still have that kind of spontaneity of a hike will make the difference, or can make the difference between you surviving a bad situation and not surviving a bad situation. And again, I want to make sure that this is known. I am not now, nor have I ever been, nor will I ever claim to be an expert in any of this. This is all just my opinion. And this is all just my humble, uneducated opinion on what I see as being a help. And if you are planning an overnight hike, and it doesn't matter if it's one night or if it's a 2 week long outing, it doesn't matter. Put one of these together and have it available. And that's the other thing that I didn't really talk about was not only do you have a copy of it in your vehicle at the trailhead, but you give a copy of that itinerary to anybody. You know, you give it to your family members, friends, coworkers, the local law enforcement, the local sheriff's office, ranger station, you know, wherever. That way, in the event of something happening, they don't have to break into your vehicle to get your itinerary and be able to take a closer look at your map. But just know that if you do this, if you do have an itinerary and you stick to it as best you can, now granted, there's always extenuating circumstances, and that goes without saying for everything, then it just might save your life. And I would, in my opinion, if you have to give up a little bit of spontaneity in order to potentially save your life, I think that's a pretty good trade, in my opinion. And again, it doesn't have to be a complete 100% outline that you're going to leave at 9:30 in the morning. You're going to hike for a half an hour and stop for a break. You're going to hike for another 4 hours and stop at this lake at whatever time. It doesn't have to be super, super specific. It just has to be specific enough that it helps the emergency responders get a head start on trying to find you. So that's it for this one, for this episode, over covering the itinerary. Our next one will be, I think we'll talk about 10 things that you absolutely need to know before you hit the trail. Just 10 things. I'm not going to cover that. I mean, because there's lots and lots and lots of things. That list could go on for a long time. So we'll just cover 10 things that I feel are fairly important. If let me know in the comments what you guys think about this whole itinerary thing. And if there's things that I missed that you think are more important than the ones that I put out there, let me know. Let me just put them down in the comments below, and because you might have thought of something that I haven't, and so if there's a way that I can make my itineraries better, then I'm all about that. So, with all that said, always remember, I love you. God loves you. Peace.